Jesse, are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's do this.
Fill in the blank. It's blank that Notre Dame has announced the September 28th game against Louisville as their Irish wear green game.
To me, it's sweet, sweet revenge because I think there's a bitter taste on their mouth from Louisville last year. That was a big game, obviously underperformed, and it had, a lot of consequential impacts on the season, if you ask me. And so I think that this shows that it's a game that they're taking seriously. I know it's like they take every game seriously, but I think they want everyone to, they want this to be a big game. They want to be able to avenge or revenge their loss from last season against Louisville. And so the more that you can add to it, it adds, more fan engagement. It adds more hype to the game. And so I think that it's more to just wearing green. I think that they really want to, like I said, kind of avenge their loss to Louisville last season. They have a chip on their shoulder. And they're just adding more fuel to the fire by making it the green game.
I do think it's interesting that the green game, the Louisville game, is going to be the game that is not on actual NBC. It's going to only stream on Peacock. So there's that. But, I saw some people asking, does this mean that they're wearing green? In all likelihood, it does. I think that's what, that's how they've done it the last couple of years. And I like the way they've done it. This is what I said a few years ago that they should do. And that's what they've been doing the last couple times is pick a game. This is going to be the green game. And the team
don't make it a surprise. Don't. Not everyone's speculating. Ooh, are they going to come out in the green uniform? Just let it be known.
Exactly.
Let the expectations be known.
Let everyone know in advance because it's September. The weather's still warmer. Fans can wear their green shirts. You can sell plenty of green T-shirts and all that different kind of stuff, and everybody has fun with the greenness. Interesting, Chief Brody, man. Chief Brody is like the fun guy at the party. He's tired of videos, to be honest. He wants more playoff appearances and fewer videos. I mean, I guess Brody is one of these guys that like thinks that Marcus Freeman is never supposed to sleep, and he's only supposed to be out there, like coaching and crunching film 24/7. You're not supposed to do anything.
People like recruits love the green too. It's a promotional aspect. There's a lot more to it than.
Remember, most of the work on these videos is done by the social media / Fighting Irish media department.
They just tell Marcus Freeman where to be and what to say.
Yeah, record a couple lines. That's pretty much it. And then they do all the work afterwards. So, you're right about the recruits. It's we live in a social media world, for good or for bad. You got to put it out there on social media.
People like jersey combinations.
Yeah. They like jersey combinations and they like following this stuff on social media. And personally, I'd rather see some of this stuff than a lot of other garbage that you see on social media. So I'm good with it. All in good fun. I'm all in good fun there, Chief Brody. We know. Irish cornerback Benjamin Morrison says he's 100% healthy. We got to talk to him today as well. We asked him when he got to 100%. And somehow I thought that I had this in there. It went away. There it goes.
I can tell you. I just think over time. It's a constant battle getting your confidence back. But I think I got to put my trust in God, and I think I've been healthy for a while now.
Healthy for a while now. Scale of 1 to 10, Jess. How important is it that Benjamin Morrison is now 100%?
I mean, it's a 10 out of 10. We're talking about an All-American corner, and this wouldn't be as big of a deal had they not opened the season with Texas A&M on the road. You need your best experienced cornerback, in the secondary along with Xavier Watts. And I'm not saying that I wouldn't trust Christian Gray or Jaden Mickey. I just have more trust in Benjamin Morrison. He's played in big-time games. And honestly, when you think about it, he shows up the most in big-time games. Who had interceptions against Clemson. I want to say potentially Ohio State, but I might be lying on that one. But it's just he steps up in the big moments. And so, when the stage gets brighter, Benjamin Morrison just shines even more. And I think having him, it's going to be also, a confident boost for everyone else on the field, knowing that his side of the field is going to be shut down. So to me, it's a 10 out of 10.
He had an interception against USC last year.
That's what it was
that you were thinking of. And obviously he had, the big game 2 years
I mean, that's still the
ago
number one
against
quarterback in the
Clemson.
draft. So
Yeah. That's exactly right. Him and Xavier Watts both went wild in that game. It's a 10 out of 10 to me. I think Brody said, hey, look, my biggest concern with the defense, I know a lot of people concerned about the linebackers and, the youth of the linebackers and inexperience and all that stuff. My biggest concern the whole time has been the depth of the secondary, specifically the corners. And if you don't have your All-American cornerback, Benjamin Morrison, then that sets you back even farther in terms of depth, especially when you're going on the road to open the season against a good opponent in a hostile environment. You need it. Now, like Hobbs and Moore, we've seen some good stuff from them in some of these practice videos that Notre Dame has put out on social media. By the way, I'm perfectly fine with those videos, and I think you should be too, Brody and everybody else. But I think that it's a 10 out of 10. You get Benjamin Morrison, you potentially got Christian Gray on the other side. I think you're feeling more than good. You're feeling really good about this defense if you got him at full health. So big time. He did say that, they do still kind of, pull him back a little bit, and, not all the time full bore contact and all that kind of stuff, which is understandable because he is still just like 4 months removed from shoulder surgery. But, he'll be a full go when it comes to Texas A&M from everything that he said today. So CBS Sports' Danny Kannell was on the Ryan Russillo podcast this week, and he had a thought or two about Notre Dame and their chances for a championship this season. Here's what Danny Kannell said.
Leonard coming off an injury, going to a new system where they just lost their left tackle after losing Joe Alt. So, Joe Alt goes to the Chargers. So now they're bumping in another guy, and they have to go to Texas A&M week 1. Got Florida State. Essentially, it's a 2, maybe 3-game schedule. So, I think that's what people are projecting because they should be able to, 10-2 looks very doable, if not almost guaranteed. But I think they have zero chance of winning the national championship. They're going to be in. Riley Leonard is, and I love him. He's a really good kid. He had 3 passing touchdowns last year. 3. And the way he's talked about, the year before, I think he had 20, but he is not exactly lit it up. He still needs a lot of development as a passer in a new system.
Okay, so there's Danny Kannell on the Ryan Russillo podcast. Do you buy or sell any of that? There were some different points. One, he thinks 10-2. They're not a serious national championship contender, and obviously he picked apart Riley Leonard and said that he has some serious concerns about Leonard, and he mentioned the offensive line there as well. So in or out, buy or sell? What do you think about what Kannell's saying?
I think 10-2 is the floor of this team. If they go 10-2 this season, I believe that those that would be a failed season ultimately. So I don't think that. I think if they go 10-2, they are not serious championship contenders. But that's not where I see them. I see them at 11-1, 12-0 team. And I think what Danny Kannell forgets to mention is that offense is one side of the ball. They still have a very good defense and a defense that's going to limit a lot of teams. So that helps out your offense in terms of how much production that they need. And so in comparison to last season, they were just a couple plays away, right? And you can say that this offense is going to be better than what last year's offense was going to be with Riley Leonard, with Mike Denbrock. I mean, yeah, there are definitely questions at the offensive line, but when you lose 2 starters to the NFL, that's a question for any team. So, okay, that's a fair criticism at the end of the day. The Riley Leonard stuff, I'm not buying it because he's not. He fails to mention that he was injured last year. Of course, he only had 3 passing touchdowns.
Yeah, exactly.
So how can you evaluate Riley Leonard? Riley Leonard's season last year cannot be evaluated. He was injured.
The 3 touchdowns that he mentioned, the 3 touchdowns passes that he mentioned came before the injury. He had 4 touchdown runs before the injury as well. So even though he only threw 3 touchdown passes, he's a dual threat quarterback who had 7 total touchdowns through the first 5 games, including a season opening win over the 9th ranked team in the country. And on top of that, the 3 games that they had in between Clemson and Notre Dame were blowout wins, so you've got other guys in there as well. And I think I can't remember if I just mentioned it. He was completing better than 75% of his passes prior to the injury. So like prior to the injury, he's completing better than 75%. Post injury, his completion percentage went down. He obviously was not able to play in a full game after the injury. I mean, that's the biggest factor right there, is the guy still had 7 total touchdowns in the 5 games he was healthy before he was hurt. And the team, with the exception, the team was undefeated going into the Notre Dame game, and they lost a close game to the 11th ranked team in the country, Notre Dame, in that game.
So where did I think I just ran into some connection issues. So where did I kind of cut out at?
I thought that you would just kind of you were talking a little bit about Riley Leonard, and that's where I picked up as I was talking about Riley Leonard and everything that he did, again, because of the injury is the biggest thing with Riley Leonard. Now, the other stuff, I mean, we started off this show talking about the offensive line and what's going to happen there. That's a big concern. I think it became a bigger concern based on what we saw at practice today, and the fact that you had a completely different left side of your offensive line out there. That's legit. But like you said, 10-2 would be a disappointing season. Like that would be the minimal expectation for this season.
With their
if
schedule,
all you are is 10 and I think most people, their minimal expectation is much above that.
I think, echoing what you said, you can't evaluate Riley Leonard last season. If you want to, let's look at the opening game against Clemson. He won that game against Clemson. He found a way to win. I think what Danny Kannell also fails to mention is how
he ran
someone
for almost 100 yards in that game.
Right.
That's a big part of Leonard's game, obviously.
Well, and second, I think you have to, if you're Danny Kannell, it's a disservice to not mention, Mike Denbrock pairing with Riley Leonard as well, because of what he was able to do with Jaden Daniels and how Riley Leonard fits kind of that similar profile of Jaden Daniels. And so, I think it's a little bit lazy, because I think it's easy to kind of jump on and just kind of look at things from a more macro level and say, oh, they lost some offensive linemen. Oh, Riley Leonard still has some question marks. Okay, Danny Kannell, but how about going into last season? Riley Leonard was on a lot of NFL scouts' big board to go in the first round. Those things don't just come out of nowhere.
Yep.
Like, his arm is going to develop. And now that you have an offensive coordinator that's legit, like Mike Denbrock, I think it's fair to say that his passing is going to get better. And I think and even, a big brain type of comment would be to say, if Riley Leonard can develop as a passer under Mike Denbrock, then this offense could have the ability to go all the way. And I think that's where all of us as fans are saying is Riley Leonard, if they can develop the passing game better than what they did last season with Sam Hartman, they will overcome some of those shortcomings in big moments and win the games that they were supposed to win last year and be on the cusp of a 12-0 and 11-1 season.
A lot of great points, and I'm not going to disagree with any of them. Again, like the offensive line, that's a legitimate thing, but the Riley Leonard stuff, I don't necessarily agree with that. So Kannell also has some doubts about Notre Dame's receiving core. Let's go back to Jordan Faison today. Here's what he said about the depth of the Notre Dame receivers.
I mean, we have everything. We got the big guys, the fast guys, the quick guys. I mean, we can hit you from every angle. We can attack zone, attack man, and I think it's a testimony to what we've developed over the years, and to the guys from last year that have kind of started that, and then to now carrying on those same things. And yeah, we just got guys that can just ball.
So here's my question. Again, Kannell doubting Notre Dame's receivers. Obviously, a Notre Dame receiver is going to have good things to say about his group. My question is, are we, the royal we right here, are we overvaluing Notre Dame's wide receivers, or are they being undervalued nationally? Which is more true, I guess.
I think it's a combination of both, but the issue that you run into is they don't have a proven wide receiver. And so at the national level, they can't point to someone and say, this guy is definitely going to be a stud and produce. And us as fans, we see it more day in and day out. And I think we see the potential of this wide receiver core of, okay, we see Jaden Greathouse can play in the slot and can play out at the outside wide receiver position. We see that Jordan Faison can also get on the field. And okay, how about, a wide receiver set that pairs Faison, Greathouse, and Chris Mitchell, right? And so I really liked his comment there because he said, we have an answer for everything. We have fast guys, we have big guys, we have zone beaters, we have man beaters. But until everything comes together and we see them play a game and we see how Mike Denbrock moves the pieces around on the offense, I think it's fair to say that we are overvaluing, and the national people are undervaluing, because again, what proof do they have? Notre Dame doesn't have, the hard stats of this guy's 1,000-yard receiver and a 60 reception type guy and a 10 touchdown type guy. There's just not production there yet. But when we see, okay, this is Mike Denbrock's offense, we know that this is what he wants to do. Okay, we see that there's a really talented group of wide receivers that's fast, that's strong, that's physical. Now they just need to go out there and do it. And I think that's the important part to me.
I think I agree with what you're saying. I think it's probably a little bit of both. I think it's more, as we get, but we have what we saw last year to base our opinion on. And obviously nationally, that's what most people are going on. So obviously, they're not taking as deep a look, and like in Kannell's case, the fact that you never even heard him bring up Mike Denbrock and what he was talking about, like when he was picking apart Riley Leonard, like the addition of Mike Denbrock here and the fact that Notre Dame is going to have a completely different offense than what they had before, and it's going to play more to Leonard's skills, but also now the fact that you can see it. You can see that there is the depth that you were just talking about, and the fact that they've got these different body types to do all these different things, but there's speed there as well. And what were we talking about with Chris Mitchell a little bit ago? The fact that he can take the top off the defense, take a safety with him, and now that leaves the rest of the field that Leonard can potentially pick apart with these different kind of receivers that he has. So I think it's more that they are being nationally undervalued, but, we probably do overvalue them a little bit. But again, it goes back to the body of work that we saw last year compared to what this group looks like this year. It's just so different that I think that really anyone nationally isn't going to be able to truly appreciate it until they get their eyes on it. And we've at least been able to see some glimpses of it in the practices that we've been to.
I think the first few games is really going to change the narrative nationally, because the most important thing is this is just going to be a completely different looking offense. I think everyone has an idea of what Notre Dame has looked like the last 5 or 6 years at the offense and wide receiver position. Like they've been a more dominant, tight end heavy, kind of big sets type stuff. But like we talked about, this offense is going to be motioning around. They're going to find ways to get a lot of different wide receivers on the field depending on what they're trying to accomplish. So, yeah, I mean, as a fan, I think the most important thing is just have fun with how different this offense is going to look. And I think it's going to change a lot of people's perspectives.
So we're going to finish up with some we in, we out questions, the final we in and we out questions that we weren't able to get to the other day because we were on a time crunch. Are you in or out on closing the current college football record books and letting them stand for the rest of history and starting new record books moving forward due to college football playoff expansion? In or out on that?
I'm going to say out. I think that the record books are always kind of continuing. Like the NFL didn't end theirs when Cooper Kupp, I think, broke the record a few seasons ago, but he had, at least an extra game compared to, some of these other teams. So if you really want to look at it, you can break down the numbers, more kind of on a like per game basis, right? I think there's ways to always analyze the numbers, but I don't know. I think that the game is always evolving, and so there would have to be kind of always like 20-year periods if that's the way you're going to look at it. Because are we going to say that record books shouldn't count for running backs back in the day because there were more run-heavy offenses compared to now where there's more spread out kind of passing offenses? I just don't want to kind of get into that, constant cycle of finding ways to kind of justify records and stuff like that. I just think it's one continuous linear point. You just kind of keep going, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. The difference in college sports and professional sports is professional sports keeps a regular season record, and then then anything that comes in the postseason is factored completely separately. Those stats don't count. But, like even you've seen expansion, obviously, in all the professional sports. You've seen both expansion of the teams, which can, water down the talent pool to an extent, and that helps or hurts different guys. But at the same time, you've also seen an expansion in the number of games that they play. Just like the NFL has expanded to 17 games, and like you saw all of these records obviously shattered that for not shattered, but you saw a lot of these single season records fall right away in that first season because you added a game, and they're not going to put any asterisks next to them. It's part of the way it is. And there's already some imbalance anyway, because of the fact that these conferences, like teams like Alabama that are in the SEC championship game consistently, Ohio State, they're all getting an extra game, and those all count for their regular seasons as well. So I agree with what you're saying. I don't think you alter the record book or put an asterisk or anything like that. You just, games get added, and because not everyone's going to make it to the playoffs either. So
yeah,
it's going to look, and like we're already in an era where all these we're coming out players right now, like these sixth-year guys like Jack Kaiser and Howard Cross. They're the last of the guys who got the extra COVID year of eligibility. This is the final season. Like if you were a freshman during that COVID season, this is the final year for that extra season of COVID eligibility. So like even for that, a lot of records have been altered, and they're not going back and putting asterisks on any of that either. In or out on Notre Dame hosting a college football playoff game this season?
I think that's a double question. And to me, it's like, are they going to go undefeated? I think they're neither an undefeated or an 11-1 team this season. So I don't think 11-1 gets them that 5 seed. I think that, someone else will get the benefit of the doubt, especially because Notre Dame's not in the conference.
But you don't have to be a 5 seed to host. You just have to be 5, 6, 7, 8. So if you're one of those 4 seeds, you would get to host.
So with a record of 12-0 or an 11-1, I do think that gets you a top, 8 seed in the country. So I'm going to say we in on this one, because I do think that's what ultimately the record is going to be. I just don't see them losing 2 games this season. Now that could all change depending after the first game, but
yeah, I'm a little more nervous about this offensive line now than I was even a couple of days ago. But yeah, that could obviously our whole opinion on that could change pretty quickly, and we might all be drinking a few cocktails. But I'm in on them hosting a game because I like you. I think they're either 0 loss or 1 loss, and that's going to get them most likely at the very worst an 8 spot. I would think if they are a 1 loss Notre Dame team, I would think that the worst that they're going to do is be the 8 seed, and they would get to host in that case. True point, Salty. They haven't consistently been recently. Ohio State, he called me out on the Big Ten championship game because they couldn't beat Michigan, of course. But they've played in a lot of Big Ten championship games anyway. In or out on Alabama missing the playoffs this year?
I'm going to say out. I do believe that they have a pretty favorable schedule for, a first-year head coach. And Alabama is still Alabama. There's a ton of talent on that roster. They're still recruiting at a high level. I mean, their season to me boils down to 3 games: Georgia, LSU, and Oklahoma. I think they'll beat out Oklahoma. I do think that they'll beat LSU, and I think they're again an 11-1, 10-2 team. And I think that an 11-1, 10-2 Alabama in the SEC is definitely in the playoffs. So I'm gonna say out on Alabama missing the playoffs.
I think I'm going to go in on them missing the playoffs, actually. And Vince and I were trying to do a prediction yesterday that kind of blew up on, who's going to make the playoff this year. I had Alabama out. I think Kalen DeBoer is a good coach, but I do think that because of Nick Saban kind of holding that together last year, I think that Alabama, the whole was better than the sum of the parts. I'm not saying it was a horrible team because it's obviously they're still recruiting, but I'm not completely sold that Kalen DeBoer can get out of Jalen Milroe what Saban was able to get out of him last year, and I think that there are enough questions with what they have this year. And you mentioned some of the big games that they have that they're always going to have to play in the SEC. So I think Alabama misses. I think that they are at least 2 losses, if not maybe even 3 losses this season. In or out on Nebraska having more wins than LSU this season?
I just have to say out. I know that LSU is going to probably play a tougher schedule. I like what I'm seeing out of Nebraska and Rule. I just don't think that you can get that thing flipped around kind of that quickly in year one. I think Brian Kelly's a better coach. I think they have more talent. It's just a matter of if LSU can just be competent on defense this season. If they can just be halfway competent, I think they're a double-digit win team as well.
I'm out as well. Nebraska to me is like the new Texas. Everyone wants to say, "Oh, is Nebraska back now this year?" They were a 5-7 team last year. That's only 1 win better than they were the year before that. And I know it's a bunch of close losses, but you can go back. It's like 4 years in a row now they've had all these close losses, regardless of who the coach is. So I'm just out on them until they actually prove they deserve for someone to think that they are actually back. So I'm gonna stick with LSU. I think that they're probably like a 9-3 team at worst this season, and I don't see Nebraska getting close to that number just based on the track record that we have on them right now. So I've got to be out on that. I think that's going to do it for tonight, Jess.
We breezed through this one.
We did. Smoked that show. A lot of good stuff. Again, we're supposed to talk to Marcus Freeman, Mike Denbrock, Al Golden on Saturday. So maybe we have, some answers on what this situation is going on with the Notre Dame offensive line right now. Maybe we find that out a little bit on Saturday. So we will find out then. Appreciate you being here, Jess. Appreciate you as always. DK has a question for you. Have you declared? Have you committed one way or another?
I can't be, who knows who's out there listening. When it's time, it'll be time.
All right. We will wrap it up with that. Hit the like button if you would. And, of course, subscribe, rate, and review. Again, appreciate you being here. And we will talk to you later on IB Nation Sports Talk.